And we are in the final session of our 2024 Zimbabwe Real Estate Expo. We've had 3 finals earlier on, and the next final that we're going to be having will be moderated by Erica. But before we do that, just a bit of housekeeping, or maybe just reminders really. So tomorrow, remember, if you haven't registered for the tours to Millennium Heights, we're going to do a panel of development as well, and then lunch will be served at Exodus, so you don't want to miss that. So go ahead and register. It's for free, no charge, but if you do not register, you cannot attend. So please do that so that we can sort out our logistics properly there. I was curious about sponsor the awards at dinner tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. So we do have a sponsor that has sponsored 50% of the ticket price for people that are here this afternoon. So now you can just pay a half and the other half is taken care of. Please, these are the inaugural Zimbabwe Real Estate Awards. Let's make them count.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the next conversation, trying to what is it centered on?
Okay, so we did talk about technology, we talked about financing, we talked about the law frameworks governing real estate and construction. Now, McDonald, we're moving on to housing. Housing. In terms of housing, we want to look at affordable housing strategies, bridging the house gap. McDonald, I think for an average Zimbabwean, which is everyone, whether one room, whether kashi, but that is a Zimbabwean dream. Where you grew up and say the ultimate pinnacle of success, or at least the foundation of the success, is having your own home. So I think it would be the premise of this conversation. Say, okay, probably I'm earning $200 a month, I'm 22 years old, in the market, is my dream still alive? And I think that's what comes to mind. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think we literally laid it down and said, yes, everyone's going to own something, of some sort, and have something where they call home, where they go to. And so, Eric and Dora will be taking care of us in terms of moderating the conversation. So, Erica, over to you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That is at McDonald and at Trison. I will take them. I will be taking over. I do trust that we are well settled. I do know that we can be a bit off the edge, especially after lunch. But I do most certainly hope that I do still have your attention. As we get into the last panel of the expo, actually. Now, the 4th panel, we will be talking about affordable housing strategies. And on that note, we will be taking into account bridging the gap that is there as we are touching on affordable housing. Now, on my panel, I will be sitting with Chester Mende, Aaron Kumanja, Tendai Mavura, and also Mike Tashaya. Now, okay, as we head toward it, just let me do our show of hands. But please also have Aaron Kumanja with me on the platform. Tendai Mavura. And lastly, if I could please have onto the panel, Mike Tashaya. I will then ask Chester to please, if you could move closer for the sake of audible conversation. I am reliably informed you that Sen is carrying regards in absentia. That is at Mike Tashaya. As we're going to be talking about affordable housing strategies, I will allow the panelists, for those who are not inclined with property or construction, as I will allow the panelists to give us introduction commentaries or profiles on themselves so that we all know who we are taking nuggets from. I will start from my right and I will give Mr. Mende the microphone. You do have.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am your geriatric from yesterday. The name is Chester Mende. I'm the Managing Director of Shelter Incorporated. We house you in residential spaces from single dwellings, cluster homes, flats, gated estates, to Afterlife. We have two brands in the Afterlife, which you traditionally refer to as a cemetery, in Etosha Memorial and Etosha Gardens, which are behind the Rua Golf Club. And it's a pleasure to be here. Eric, one thing I saw when I was here yesterday was that there is a particular signature about today's crowd, or this conference crowd. It's a young generation that are picking up the baton.
To that, I must say, Mr. Mende, we were actually having a conversation that was with Tiffany and together with Dr. Luan. We're talking about how, as young people, we actually need to get into this space. Acquire some property. It's not something that's too familiar with our generation, but we need to be that alert and put that up to time. So these conversations are really important. I think they adhere more to the young crowd than they would to the elderly one, because I think it's a focus.
Yes, but the one thing that I must share with you, and again, the benefit of being a geriatric, is that I don't know if you have noticed, there is a general trend here, everyone else will want to take a phone. If you notice, the same is happening with real estate. In the last 2-3 months, there has been no less than 6 conferences. But the hint that I want to give you, especially you, the youngsters, and the young organizers, is to monitor these conferences and build on them. Because what I seem to notice is that there is a given trend that people pick up. Like, for example, the topical issue lately is REITs. Almost every conference you go to is talking about REITs, and it gets boring. So, you want to segment real estate, and real estate is naturally segmented in 7 units. And I'll let you go and look for the 7 units yourself, or yourselves, but generally you start by designation of land, you go on to town planning of land, and you go on to legislation governing land, you go on to development, and you go on to funding it. So, I think all those segments require discussion.
I do think departmentalization is very important, as you were saying, but for the sake of introduction, over to you, Tendai Mbola, if you could please just give us welcome remarks and a young profile on yourself.
Okay, my name is Tendai Mbola. As I introduced myself earlier, I think it's still probably the same crowd. I am CEO of Zimbabwe Global Investments, which is owned by Malk International, a Dubai-based company. I suppose maybe I'll tell you just a little bit about that. So one of their flagship products in Dubai is the Burj Khalifa. Most of you will know Burj Khalifa. All the cladding that you see on that building is actually done by Malk International. So they are the ones that own Zimbabwe Global Investments, and the development called Cyber City is one of the developments that they are doing here in Zimbabwe. A little bit about myself. The most important part about me is that I'm a mother of 3 adults, which is probably what I do, what I did. I spent a lot of my adult life looking after my children. So, yeah. However, I grew up with fathers that built, and I always grew up on a construction site. So I am a passionate builder at heart. That's what I do, and that's what I love.
Yeah, thank you so much. Definitely two pickups from there. Some cyber city is definitely giving the reminisce of the Burj Khalifa, so definitely waiting to pick up on nuggets. And being a mom has got to be the world's most important job. And then over to you, I will bring it on to Aaron Kumanja.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Kumanja. I'm the group CEO and founder of RealtorView Property Group. So under RealtorView Property Group, we have RealtorView Real Estate, which does property sales, property management, valuations, and advisory. Then we have RealtorView Property Development, which does infrastructure, roads, sewer, water, and irrigation. Then we have Blessed Crew Equipment Hire. We own earth moving equipment under the group. It is under RealtorView. It's under Blessed Crew Equipment Hire. Then we diversified. We also do cars. We have what we call Realtor Fitness Center. We do panel painting, spray painting, chassis straightening, and detailing of cars. And I'm working very hard to try and bridge the gap. When we talk of affordability of houses, we categorize the people, because she's talking of cyber city. The minimum that you can pay there is 500,000, but in this room, we are forced to buy a property for 500,000. But for us as a RealtorView Group, our vision is to shelter mankind. So we cater for all classes of people. So I have developments in Harare, I have developments outside Harare, which caters for all classes of people. And we have a trust that we have put up together, trying to help the youngsters acquire properties. Fortunately for me, I'm 34, and my first property I bought it when I was 27. One of my friends came to me and said, you know what, I've been trying to save to buy a property for the past 4 years. I saved my money up to 60,000. Then I had an accident, a lot happened in the money. I couldn't do anything. And I said to him, you know what, we have got a trust that we have. Start depositing your money into the trust. We give you receipts and everything. Start in 2021. In 2024, his money was 22,000. Then we allocated him a estate in one of our gated communities in Borato, actually. So we are trying to bridge the gap. Currently, we are undertaking 2,000 households in not only for low income earners. We pulled together 2,000 individuals, they pulled resources together, we bought the land, and now we are developing. We are doing the same in Mangura, Mashona and West, we are doing 1,500 households. Then we have 3,000 hectares of land in Shackleton. We have another 2,000 hectares in Alaska. Then we have 2,000 hectares in Chikutu. We are trying to help low-income earners acquire properties, because what you need is the entry level. If you want the first one, it's easy for you to upgrade to go to the next property.
Thank you so much. We will definitely be tapping. We can give it a round of applause. We will certainly will be tapping into securityship when it comes to how you can then be part of a trust, and just how much can you trust the trust, especially as a layman investor. Did you think that's like, how do I then trust? But we'll definitely be tapping into that. And for repetition purposes, I've come to learn that assumption is a very bad form of politics. And it can be very bad for me to assume that we all know each other. With that being said, my name is Erica Lora. I'm a radio and TV personality, a moderator for corporate affairs as well. And so I sit here in front of you as I'm moderating the last panel of this event. We will be touching on affordable housing strategies, bridging the housing gap. And we do have a lot to touch on, because I feel like this last topic does really relate to everybody, especially before you do have anything. One thing that I do know is that so I urge a lot of people to pay attention, because this is the first step of what you should know and how you get to the top. With that being said, I think I'll start with Mr. Mende and ask for the key factors that contribute to the current affordable housing. And when I ask for the key factors, I ask from the developer side, from the private sector side, what are the key factors when you consider affordable housing for us, the investors, for us, the layman purchaser? Cheap loans in affordable housing, and how do you think of it? What comes into the infrastructure, the material, the greenness of it, the funding?
Thank you very much. Let me start by referring you to what I said yesterday. I spoke about community funding, and I want that to ring real strong at the back of your minds. The community, society, has a duty to itself. We have a habit of relying on government, but I think we must move away from that. We must encourage a culture of community funding. And I want to also reiterate what I said yesterday, that by community funding, I'm not talking about...
I would like to assume that's a minor glitch in the matrix, as you were.
I was about to dance. I thought it was part of the presentation. So, as I was saying, it's not like, it's pretty much like your traditional cooperatives. But, you know, in our communities, we are all familiar with burial societies, where a bunch of people get together either on the basis of their church, their school, or whatever they do in community. And I'm saying that's what we should do. The simple reason is you need community. But if I borrow from what my sister mentioned yesterday, some of these things will need regulating. And I remember my sister was walking us through, a regulation, like Erica is talking about. So these communities will obviously need some form of regulation. So as you go into them, please make sure that these are regulated. Critical to affordability is access, and obviously access is directly related to affordability. Now, access, we heard from my brother who was talking about pieces of land in Shackleton in Alaska. The same is happening here. We walk outside to Romanex and we will see they have a Chieta development just outside Harare South. To me, that is an indicator of a beginning, an entry point, because you are going to buy a stand there for about $12,000. I think $12,000 is an affordable number. Now, you must forgive me that I don't generally talk below the 3,000 threshold. And the simple reason I don't talk below the 3,000 threshold is because below $3,000 is what you call social housing. And social housing requires government aid, government assistance. For those of you who are old enough, you'll be familiar with Makavama Chapi flats. In their time, they were the entry point for social housing. And I speak to you because you are a complete mixture of professions in here, from ahead of lawyers, ahead of town planners, ahead of builders, and financiers. So as I speak to you, I expect that you are the mouthpiece into what is happening in the world. So governments clearly must be spoken to, local authorities must be spoken to about social housing. And we have a responsibility ourselves to social housing. So that is something that must be looked into. Now, we are all familiar with master plans that have been talked about, starting with His Excellency in the last 6 months. But those master plans are, the global perspective. Local authorities have to reduce them to local plans. Your local plans are what then instructs the step-by-step at a local level affecting you, the individual. And in those local plans, we must implore our authorities, we must implore our practitioners, ourselves as developers, to attend to the issues that are necessary. Now, if each one of us in here tried to go to Chitumbwiza right now, to any of our high-density suburbs, getting in and out of there is quite a feat. It's either because of roads, or it's because of traffic lights, and then you extend to clinics and hospitals that don't function, and a number of other issues that are in there. The local plans must talk to that, so that they discuss the coexistence between the private sector, the business community, and the local area. So, I don't know what else I can say about accessibility and affordability. I've talked about the funding side of it, which is at a community level. I've talked about entry at social housing. And then I spoke about my young brother and colleagues in the trade who are coming in with products that get us there, and then we graduate. And let me just give you a parting shot. My brother-in-law, who comes after my wife, left university, went to work in a bank, and his first property was a stand we sold him in Glenview 2 and 3. Now, he was, at that time, he just left, his first job was at an advertising house, his next job was at a bank, and then his last job before he went on his own was COO at Econet in the days of Strive Masivo, so he was quite a big fellow. But his entry into housing was with that stand in Glenview 2 and 3. He never stayed there. He built a house gradually, which was the equivalent of what we call core houses. He then sold it, and with that he was able to buy a house. My mother-in-law today lives in Mount Pleasant. Thank you.
I do love that. Thank you for those nuggets. I did pick up that critical to affordability is access. And adding on to what Aaron did say during his introductory comment was that the first thing you must do is acquire the first land, and from there you build on, just like your brother-in-law. So definitely that is something to take note of and take home. I will move forward, and I would like to pitch this. At this point, I'd like to also note that I'm asking questions not in any order, but yeah. I want to pitch this with Aaron simply because of your introductory comments as well. Maybe if you could touch on the role that local governments and municipalities play in ensuring that housing is affordable, or maybe for that matter, addressing the shortages of stands, of land.
I think the local authority should provide the land, but unfortunately, all the land in the vicinity of the cities, they are now privately owned. That's why you find that most of the stands in our area, the authentic ones, they are very expensive. It's because council doesn't own land. In the past, the local authority would have pieces of land, then they would allocate that to cooperatives. Then cooperatives would then get money from the individuals and allocate people's stands. Then people will contribute, then developments will be going on, according to the monies that are coming from the people. But now, that is no longer there. So the only only land which has remained, which we can get assistance from government, is the state land, which are the farms that are within the vicinity. That is after Nyabira and, in other areas. So maybe what we may need to do is to lobby the government to release the land and partner with the private players so that they can provide affordable housing. But still, it's going to be a challenge, because when we talk about affordability, there are different classes of people. We'll take an example of civil servants. They get $250 or $300.
That's at most?
Yeah, that's at most. Then the person has 3 kids to send to school. They have got rent, they've got other things that they need to pay for. So for them to spend $150 or $200 to pay for a stand is difficult. At the same time, the government also is struggling even to provide the basic things that are needed. So it will still come back to what my brother said, that the onus is on us, the private sector and individuals, to find ways to provide affordable houses. And one of the things that we have done a successful project, like I said, in Norton, where we gathered 2,000 people. We contributed 1,250 each for a space of 6 months. We bought a farm, 105 hectares. Then people started contributing 150, 200 per month towards the development. So we are doing more of these initiatives to try and bridge the gap.
Thank you. I do know that we have a tight budget on time, but I will ask you maybe to, in a jiffy, then answer this as a follow-up question. You did mention that a lot of land that is not on the outskirts has now been acquired but it's now private property. Would you say that's now the reason why a lot of property is expensive? I think on the past platforms or panels, people have been asking the questions on why property seems to be more expensive in Zimbabwe, rental or to buy. So is it because it's now privately owned that people do what they want with their property?
Yeah. So when a property is owned by government, they deal with what we call intrinsic value of the land. But if it's private land, someone would want the market value of the land. So as a result of that, the land becomes expensive. So I think the major drivers, I would want to go back a little bit. Why are the properties in Zimbabwe are very expensive compared to other countries? So what happened is in 2009, when the USD was introduced, banks released mortgages in the market for people to buy properties. So many people were overvaluing the property. For example, a property for 150,000, a person would go and mortgage that property for, say, 200,000. If you value the property at 150, they would make some deals, then they value the property more, because all what people wanted was to acquire properties. But as time progressed, USD gained value. The USD value, increased. As a result, people who are trying to resell their properties now, they would want to get the minimum of what they bought, or a profit on that property. So that drove the values of the properties up. And another thing, the quality properties are very few. So there is, I would say, quality properties are few. If you get a very good development with all the amenities like the sewer, water, proper ones, it will be very expensive.
Thank you so much for that one there. I will then move on to ask Tendai, and because of your extensive expose, I'll put it that way, with Dubai and everything, I must then ask you to share with us. I will call you an urban planner for the sake of this conversation, so that we can then get at what I'm trying to deduce out of this question. Can you share maybe an innovative housing design or solutions that you think maybe could then cut down, or maybe, for the lack of a better word, mitigate, or come up as a proper solution to affordable housing, to say maybe if we come up with these designs, they can accommodate more, or cure the densification or something. I mean, you've seen more, you've experienced more, I mean, from your program. So having said that, what say you?
Okay. So one of the quickest solutions to affordable housing is prefab. The world over now builds on prefab.
Maybe for those of us that don't know, what is prefab?
So it's prefabricated units. You design these, in fact, most of what we are using from a concept point of view, you design these homes on a system, again, using technology. There are various technologies that are available. One such is called Wafflecrete. If you make time, look it up online. The Wafflecrete prefab product. Basically, you have the house designed in sections, and then you basically bring sections as in sides, and you come and you erect these on site. They generally cut back on the cost of the cost of material. They cut back on the cost of time in bricklaying, and also on cost. So you save on the cost of material, but you also save on the cost of the time and labor of construction. What I do know is one of the technologies that we are exposed to also reduces carbon emissions by about 40%. So it is a very sustainable, cost-efficient, cost-effective way of building. But we also have, as Zimbabweans, we have a fixation with land. So we consistently talk about stand, buy a stand and build. There is what we call upzoning. So from an urban planning point of view, what you want to do is to be building upwards. There was a time when we thought that land was infinite, and we always had land. But if you go and you speak to state lands, or you speak to local government, they will tell you that we are now very limited in terms of the amount of land that is required, that in terms of the housing demand. At the moment, Harare alone has a deficit of over 1 million homes, right? So if you imagine where 1 million homes are going to be built in Zimbabwe, and not in Zimbabwe, in Harare alone, with the backbone infrastructure which is failing us at the moment, which clearly had not been planned for those numbers, you can see that the only way that we can do it is to go upwards and then put technology-based infrastructure, which should make affordable housing easily accessible. Because if we take, for instance, if I were to give you a simple example, we have about 300 units in Zimsaba City which are sitting on land, on individual title, sectional title, right? But we also have what we are calling G+4, and those our single units will be sitting on, say, 1,000 square meters for one household, which is a 500 square meter home, right? But we've got the G+5 apartments, and in this apartment, which is sitting on 1,400 square meters, we have 22 apartments in there. So that alone gives you a good example of what upscaling means. The cost of land per square meter in terms of development remains the same for us, right? Because we include everything, all the services that we're putting into the city. But for those that are buying on the G+5, that cost is greatly reduced because now they're going into a sectional title as opposed to a full title, which is the piece of land. So we've got to start thinking more about upzoning instead of being fixated with stands.
I do think that one of our panelists on the last panel did mention that God is not making any more land. So you are either going to acquire the bit of land that is left, which is proving to be a bit more expensive than joining the sectional part. And I think speaking to the younger people, that I would proffer as a solution to say, then let's join the upzoning part. Let's own some property instead of land. Is that right? So owning property instead of land would be the way forward, especially in the urban areas. Would you say yes?
I would say yes. Before I joined Inside the City, I spent 8 years in pump holding properties. So I also understand properties from whichever one end to the other end in value. And again, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making is this, because we have a fixation with stands. A lot of people don't actually realize that stands are a liability, right? Because when you own, if you own 10 stands, you will need to be paying levies and rates on those stands, and yet you can't generate any income on that. And yet, if you get me $40,000 today, I'll go and buy a flat in town or a house in Highfield, because I can put a tenant in there, and I can immediately start earning revenue that will allow me to pay the rent and take care of the property, so it doesn't become a liability. So when you invest in property, it must look after you rather than the other way around. Our way of investment usually leaves us in a place where we are actually looking after the properties, which is not the correct way. So as a young person investing, always consider the rate, the return on your investment, and how long it's going to take you before you can invest further in that property to get a return. If it is going to take you 10 years to build, it means you're sitting on a liability for 10 years. Unless you can afford to allow equity to grow on your investment, then you're fine. But if you can't afford the equity to wait for time to build on equity, which is increased value on the initial investment, buy something that allows you to get a return even if you can't live in it.
Would I be wrong to say a round of applause? I do think that as young people, we believe in making sure that money takes care of you, but we don't know how to make the money that takes care of us. And that's why I asked for a round of applause, because then it adds to where we must be putting our money. To say without knowing what comes with that investment and making sure that you're going to return on investment. And now that I've moved up the financial alley of this conversation, I must then ask Mr. Nenge to maybe touch on the financing options that are currently available. And I will once again refer to myself as the layman investor. By saying so, I mean just a mere $500 earner, if at all, in a month. What are the financial options available for people like us? I mean, that is before we speak to Tendai and we get to hear about upzoning and everything. If you were to speak to someone like me right now, what do we do? What are the financial options available? I speak as far as January, February,
Right, thank you. Well, what we all heard here yesterday came from my sister was tokenization. My sister was basically telling us that with $10, $20, $100, you can put money together and over a space of time, that money grows because of, it's a saving, so it has a cumulative effect. So you use that money or you call on that money when you need it, when you need to get to do what you need to do. More about that, I'll leave it to her to explain because she's obviously the fundi in it. I'm happy to explain a little bit if she promises me commission, but for now I will leave it at that. So that is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is like we talked about yesterday. In our case, we are bringing in or reintroducing mortgages from next year. And these mortgages are both domestic and diaspora mortgages. Obviously, our mortgages are going to have a bias on diaspora. The simple reason is that we want a collective approach from the diasporians to increase our muscle. But more importantly is we want to cover ourselves against the risk of currency change. Obviously, when mortgages come in, it will take you back to that time where you are looking at 10, 20% deposit and up to 20 years to repay your debt. In our case, we're looking at 10, 15 years to repay the diasporan mortgage for obvious reasons that we want to motivate and encourage that. And the local mortgages are going to start at 5 years. Those are the funding mechanisms, and I want to continue to bore you with community funding. You see, if you go to the United States, for example, 45% of the economy in the United States is SMEs. And SMEs are generally owned by your people at entry level and a little above that. And funding, most of your funding there is coming from community funding. And one of the key reasons why you go to community funding is because it's cheaper than banking finance. It's cheaper in every sense. They don't give you an umbrella when you don't need it and take it away when you need it. Because it's community, you talk to each other about the debts. But also, Erica, my brother there again spoke about the costs, and I think you were interrogating them. One of the reasons why our costs are high is because we were last in the southern region to allow home ownership. Zambia followed after us when Chiluba came into power. But we came in through Minister John Nkomo, where the houses in the townships used to be rented, and now they are owned. And home ownership was introduced by the current government, and we give them credit for that. But unfortunately, the numbers were not many. When I grew up, and I'm sure it's still the case today, your neighborhood has got more lodgers than it has homeowners. That was an issue. And that remains an issue at the moment. Your rental market is still an issue because supply is not quite at the level that it should be. But I want to hazard a guess that inside the next 24 months to 5 years, the price of housing will come down. It has to come down. Because if you look at supplies, and what I've just said, I will put money on it, in the northern suburbs, definitely. Because if you look at the rate at which they're building clusters, running out of fashion, it will not be long before everybody has clusters in his compound. Therefore, what is he going to do with them? Who is he going to sell them to? For you, the young guys, and all of you are young, don't be in a hurry to buy in Morocco, because you will buy the wrong side up. Buy in the graduated approach, so that when the time comes to get to that, prices will have come down to a level. All you have to do the analysis I've just done is go and look at South Africa and look at Sandton and Fourways area, and you will find that that is largely because of what we are talking about. So that is what I would say as access, and I want to applaud my sister on densification. We cannot stop talking about densification, but I want to compliment that point she makes. Don't bother going to densify in the middle and low income suburbs, in Borodale, in Hertford. Go and densify in the high density. And the simple reason why you must go there is because access into high density is at an affordable level. We are talking of a house in the high density at $35,000. Now, $35,000 may sound like a lot of money, but $35,000 is a lot less than $350,000 in Hatfield and Borough. So it is at least within range. And again, if I go back to the community concept, if 10 of you come together, you can afford the $35,000 very quickly, can't you? Because all you have to do is put $350 times 10, you've got $3,500, and you have afforded a deposit. And if you do that collectively, slowly, over, even if you have to do it over 24 months between the 10 of you, all 10 of you will have paid deposits in the high density.
Thank you so much, David. I think in your introduction, Aaron, you did speak about trust fund and coming together. And I did mention there's nothing worse than the thought of Guvaroma, especially show. This I'm sure a lot of people can testify to. Before you buy anything, you think, yes, I'm about to secure my future, but Doba Aaron 350 to 10. And you can imagine those 10 people, it's already hectic for you to gather 10 people that are going to give you committedly 10 times a year, $350. So please may you explain to those of us that don't understand, because this topic is really to just help bring to light how everyone can have accommodation. And you did speak against, not against, but not for, to say, you know, to buy a. So how can you speak to those of us that are trying to put together our 350 to 10?
Yeah, I would say permission and trust, but at the same time, planning documentation that we put in place. So, like for the 2,000 people that I spoke of, a trust was formed, a memorandum of understanding was put in place with the people who contributed their monies, and in the memorandum it states how the fund is managed and how everything is going to be done. So, like for us, we've got the name, we've got the assets, and we are there. We are registered estate agents. So, you are assured that if you put up your money with us, it's secured.
I will ask you to forgive my interjection,
Yeah.
and I do this so that the people sitting there can understand.
Yeah.
Are you saying if I come to you and it's me and Tiffany and say Tariro and Gay and we say, no, this is the amount of money that we have, we would like to buy one stand. So we would, the four of us, be giving you money and with documentation to just say, or we'll write down that this is what we're doing quarterly, monthly, or however, whatever the period is. Is that
yes,
right?
that's what, like I've done that successfully with 5 people, and these people are my friends. What they did is they came to me, they said, you know what, brother, we see what you are doing, but I can't afford to raise $20,000 to buy a stand. But what I want you to help me. So there's 2 problems. They can't afford to raise $20,000 at once. Secondly, they can't afford to save their own money until it gets to 20,000. Because right, when I listen to people, you got one day, but not discipline, right? So they say to me, we see what you are doing. Are you comfortable that we come and deposit our monies to you every month? Because I'm a land developer, I don't have moving equipment. I'm always developing, I'm always in the hunt for land, I'm always developing. So initially it was just trust from them. So they came, I told them, no, it's okay. But it was more schemes, and it was fund managers or something. You go, you deposit your money, they will tell you, you can offer a package, you know, $500 a month. You can fail up at the 500, maybe your investment lapses. But for us, it's different, really. You are coming, you get 1,000, you bring it, you get 500, you get 200, you bring it. We keep it for you in our trust. Can you ask you a certain level, then we find in our projects what we can allocate to you. Basically, that's how we are working, that's how we are doing it.
I stand to be corrected and I am asking questions. So so that we can then budget the time on the questions. I can imaginarily think these will be the questions that will then come up. So once the people come through to get to give you the money, it's not for a certain property, it's just until it gets to a certain amount, you can allocate a property or a stand to them that's
Yes.
for the certain amount.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a follow-up question to that, I think before I leave it to the floor, as I'm about to because of budget time, I must then ask, what is the criteria that you then look for from the people that come and leave money with you? You mentioned the first were your friends, but what is the criteria you look for from an individual who comes knocking at your door to say, listen, I heard you talking about this at the expo, this is the amount of money we have as 4 people. What do you look for? What are you looking for in the people that are coming to give you money? And what if I give you $350 just 2 months and then give you after 7 months? Does it not put you at some sort of a bother?
No, it doesn't. As long as it's not stolen funds, as long as you are not trying to clean your money through us, we will do our vetting to see whether they are genuine. You really want a property, then we can assist you.
Okay, I'm actually coming to you. Okay, you'd like to add on to that?
Okay, so just speaking into that, getting together and aggregating funds or crowdfunding to purchase property. In my other life, yes, in my other life, I am with an organization called PROWE, which is Professional Executive and Business Women Forum. And in the last 10 years, we have actually facilitated in crowdfunding for women, with women to actually buy stands and own property, because I suppose many of you know that we constantly are advocating for the government to make funds accessible to women, soft loans or loans, because women have issues with getting title deeds for security. So we've basically taken an approach that says, look, the lender doesn't want to take the risk, it doesn't matter how much you advocate, so let's ensure that women are actually owning property. And to date, I can tell you that more than 100 women within our organization actually now own stands which have been bought through a similar way of raising funds, where we put money in a pot and then we approach a developer together and we say we want X number of stands, and then the women continue to pay, but we pro rata. And then once we've reached the critical amount that we need to secure a deposit, we pay as a deposit as a group. And then the balance can always be paid in installments as individuals. One of those projects, you will see now big billboards around town called PEE, which is the Borodale Valley Estate. And the Borodale Valley Estate, we actually facilitated for that project to come off the ground, because when they approached, they needed to go through certain groups in terms of compliance. And we put money together, we engaged a lawyer, and we bought shares into the development company. But these shares were going to be converted into stands, because then we worked on the price of the land, and then we converted them into land, so you could only redeem against a stand, so the company could not give you back the money. And that was done 8 years ago. And we're now seeing the fruit of it. Most people now have an opportunity they are actually working on it. Their promotion that they're running at the moment is build now, pay later. So they are taking an approach that says you come, you pay a deposit, and when you've paid a certain deposit, you can come on the ground, you can build, and after you finish building, you can then pay for the stand. Obviously, what that means is you're not going to get your title deed until you finish paying for the land, right? But what a lot of people don't realize is the fact that when you've got a $160,000 building, which you have built, they give you 3 years to build, right? Once you have a $160,000 built on a stand which is supposed to be worth, say, $50,000, the cost is about $210,000, but if half of you go in there and build. The actual market value of that property may easily have gone up to 260,000. Now, if you're going to a bank, saying, I'd like to borrow $50,000 to pay for my stamp so I can get a title deed. The developer gets their money for the land 3 years from now. But what they've done is they've increased the value of the development in terms of the individual units. But you also now are holding a property that you can actually use to get a loan, and the bank has got security that they can actually use in order to give you the money that you need. Then you can take your time to pay the $40,000. So a lot of you listen to what yes, due diligence is very important, but listen to what the developers are actually offering, because the bigger mortgage balance sheet right now is sitting with developers and not banks. So when developers are coming and saying, we can do this, we can do this, we can offer you these terms, just check that they have a credible reputation. But there are many ways to skin a cat and there are many ways to own property. But crowdfunding and aggregating your resources is a sure way of getting into real estate.
I think that has to be one of my biggest pickup from this conversation, because from Mr. Lenga has been talking about that, Aaron as well, and you've touched on that. Security has got to be one of the biggest questions and scares that we have. Conversation for another day, definitely. I did say to the organizer of the event, Kudzai, if we would please have just more of these discussions departmentalized, as you did say today we are targeting the financing of this, and tomorrow if we could touch on that on different days, but Kudzai will definitely have to advise on that. But it would then build toward a greater conversation toward our strategies aiming at $1 billion industry. Do you have any closing remarks? I will have to take that from the both of you as closing remarks, time budget, unless it's 1 minute each, with trust.
So what I'm saying in closing is own a property, because think of a day when you are incapacitated and you are not able to do anything. The thing that you don't want is the rent. At least if you have somewhere to stay, food will come and help you. Thank you.
In closing, when you do buy a property, make sure it is not a liability. Let property build a portfolio that looks after you rather than you looking after it.
I would call those hefty advice. Mr. Mende, any closing remarks?
Thank you. Yeah, my closing remark is, I don't know if the promoters of this conference, had something to do with us in putting their conference together. Why do I say that? I've seen 4 of us present in this conference, members of the Developers Trust. Tendai is one. Her organization, Zim Cyber, is a member of the Developers Trust. Westprop is another. My company, Shelter, is one. Homelands is another. Oxford is another. All of you will be familiar with Oxford, who did Aspendale Park. Those are the founding members that I remember off the top of my head. What is the significance? My sister's balance sheet is obviously going to be a massive balance sheet. So is Oxford. So is Westprop, and so is ours, and so on. So we have peer review. None of us can afford to cheat you. So the next thing is that without trust having been registered, the next thing is we are going into a compensation fund. And the compensation fund basically is where each one of us is required to contribute a certain amount of money. Even if it's small money, it is going to be small money that is going to be used to compensate any of the customers of those members that are going to be injured by any one of us. And again, it is a measure of improving and increasing on peer review. And as you can see, those members are no small boys. So in my closing, I'm just asking anybody who's going into the developer space, you don't have to, but we would encourage you to join us so that together we can accumulate the reputation that we can all rely on to run our businesses.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that contribution, and thank you so much for the closing remarks. I will keep mentioning our time budget as we are going to get into what I think is an exciting session of networking. It is one thing to sit over that side and listen to panelists, and during our tea breaks and lunch breaks we couldn't get enough minutes. So what I will ask is that after we are done with this panel is we get together, our organizer has put together an idea where we network together. I will be giving each and every one of you seconds to talk about your business and why we should call you tomorrow. So we will come together, and that's how we're going to network really quickly together, so that everybody gets to know everybody, and you say something about your business and give a reason why the next person should call you. Hence we are tight, budget on time. Having not said that, I will be taking 2 questions. Yes, 2 questions, because we do have networking time and you can get in touch with the panelists after. So I will be taking 2 questions, and that being a lot, so that we can get to close up and moving forward.
No way!
No need to have a question actually.
Okay, talking about the trusts and all of that, that's a very nice initiative. But my question was, you're taking money, you're putting it in a trust, and if my money is going to take 3-4 years to spend, I think you said Kataka 2022, and then recently you allocated it was done. So where was that money? How did you hedge it against inflation? Yakaboga, Mbenki, Ishi, my churches.
So we don't give any interest on that money, and your money doesn't reduce in its value. So what you contributed from today up to the 10 years is the same amount that we have.
I know that in our minds we're thinking, why be that nice? But the Lord has sent us such people, and I think we can use that as an answer. You know? I will take one more question before we get moving forward. Okay.
My question, what you're doing is a little similar to what I'm doing, but I have a question for you, because I've also had this question come to me. We have provision, which I feel we need to put together, where if one of the members dies, remember when you collect money for the names of the people that are coming, so do you have a provision for the next of kin in your books, or it is part of that?
The matrix does have a lot of glitches. If you could maybe hold on to this.
So when we come to fill in the forms, we actually put your next of kin and the next person in case the next of kin is not there. So in case you die, it's either we allocate a stamp depending on what we have contributed, or we give back the money to the next of kin.
Do you know that we may have a lot of questions, but like I did say, to acquire education, one has to study. To acquire wisdom, one must observe. So I do think that in the past 2 days we've had a long time to do that, to observe, to listen, and to hear. Application is on its way. I would like to assume for the most of us. With that being said, I must say thank you to you for attending the 2 days of this expo. I will leave the rest of that to the organizer of the event to close the symposium and also unveil a couple of details that he has for us in continuation. I think as Mr. Mende did say that we do need to have different expos targeting different things. I'm pretty sure that the organizer of the event has that in mind. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I will take my way off the stage, and I also ask the panelists to make way with me as we make way for Mr.